Good people, the NZXT H1 was one of my favorite ITX experiences despite its flaws. And now we have the continuation of the SFF journey with the H2. All right. Tiny window into your wallet. Now, unlike its predecessor with the H1 that included the power supply and cooler, the H2 is a DIY PC case only with a riser cable included, and that's about it. So you have to source the rest of the components yourself, and that's a good thing, but I kind of miss the idea of like cooling and power already being sorted and optimized for the enclosure separately. So let's see how NZXT did, shall we? Obviously, there's a massive size advantage of going with ITX versus your traditional mid-tower, and despite the see-through nature of the H2, it actually looks pretty sick on the desk. The top fans are not branded just because of the see-through nature of the top panel, so there is no sticker. The only branding on the H2 are on the sides. The case is suspiciously thin toe, so here's a 280 box for reference. It is just slightly wider than the case itself, but it can still fit a lot apparently. Anything else? On the interior, things are pretty basic here. ITX support for the motherboard, SFX or SFXL power supplies, dual SSDs right underneath there with its own individual cage. The SSDs just slide in with this retention clip included. The front fan bracket is reversible. It will mount dual 120s or 140mm fans and up to a 280mm radiator. And I really appreciate the captive screws on all four corners. The dual 120mm fans included at the top are set to exhaust air, and you cannot install anything bigger here. The fans are installed from the top here with the longer screws, and we do have some cable routing holes included. If you are air cooling, CPU towers up to 75mm in height are supported. I do think it's going to be the GPU chamber that's going to be the downfall of the H2, just because the case is not tall enough to support really long graphics cards. Anything that is 3-slot and up to 331mm should fit, but I mean, graphics cards are getting so big these days, you know? I do appreciate that NZXT have thought about giving us access to the release hatch on the PCIe bracket with this cutout in the frame, but I can't help but notice that NZXT potentially could have optimized the frame over here to allow for slightly longer graphics cards if users, let's say, wanted to remove one of the fans, but of course that is not possible with this frame design. At first I thought these rubber case feet were merely a suggestion, but they do prevent scratching a surface, and there's actually quite a good stability on this enclosure. The case is not wobbling whatsoever. Very even distribution around the case feet. Very nice. My first impression about the glass though is that it's questionable. I don't like the tint because it leans towards the green, but at least we do have a removable sticker. Yay! Perhaps the most surprising thing to me about the H2 is the build quality and its consistency. Like, all the exterior toolless panels have the push pin mechanism, but with an extra anchoring point so that the panels sit nice and confident inside the frame. The panels, despite being quite thin and somewhat flexible, are actually quite strong. And the frame itself, this is just confidence. First of all, it's very light. It is still steel, but it is like not flexing anywhere. I can hold this entire thing just by this corner spine, and I'm confident nothing's gonna snap. The spine is not even bending. So they did a really good job with build quality here. I also love the precision cutouts on our front panel for the IO. That is perfection. And the IO sits on 4 screws, so it is completely removable, potentially for RMAs or maybe future modules, who knows. And of course, if any of these plastic push pins snap, they are removable with screws, which is great, but no extras included. NZXT, what the? In fact, the entire accessory pouch is just, I mean, come on, this is it? At least we have more than 4 cable ties. I appreciate the consistent circular ventilation pattern across the enclosure, and this sort of mesh is good both for airflow and dust protection, although this top piece could have been slightly more open for a quieter noise profile. You can definitely hear the turbulence both from underneath the fan because of that mesh and also the top mesh as well. I find it really strange that none of our motherboard standards are captive. They're completely flat at the top. So when it comes to mounting your ITX motherboard, none of it catches the motherboard. Like, it kind of swims around. You have to position it and only screw it in carefully, you know? Our lower left axis for the motherboard standoff is blocked by the frame. There is a cutout, but obviously LTD screwdriver doesn't fit. Time to install the riser cable. This flexing here is not really a concern because it's flexing, but it's not staying in that position. So the metal is strong enough to rebounce. I really like it when we place the power supply down. It sits perfectly inside the frame to align with our screw mounts. NZXT doesn't mention this, but obviously we want the fan to be facing our side panel so it can intake cool air instead of this fan being blocked by the motherboard tray. And I would say in general, the entire assembly process is actually quite simple. I mean, like the entire thing is completely open on both sides. You can actually see they're trying to cater to a cleaner cable management. So there's a cutout here for your 8-pin, your 24-pin has a little cutout in the actual motherboard tray. We have a few Velcro ties right behind here to secure all the cables, even though we have our GPU here. The power supply also has a Velcro strap right in front of it, but it's not big enough to like just hold everything together. It's good enough for like your 24-pin and your 8-pin, but that's about it. If they would have made this Velcro strap like double the length, it would have been more appropriate. Your IO would be easily accessible from the back. Same thing with your power supply, although now I'm noticing there's no on and off switch on this unit, but your GPU is gonna have to be routed from the bottom. We do have this cutout at the back here to let the cable sit nice and flat against the bottom feet. And now we can see why the glass is here. This is designed for an AIO pump to be visible right there. Now I completely realized the case was not made for air coolers just because of the glass.
Where's the airflow supposed to go?
But to my surprise, the temperatures are absolutely fine. Even though NZXT says this case was designed around a 280 AIO at the front, actually mounting fans there, a low profile cooler, and just, you know, using those exhaust fans, you have a very good system to add intake and remove hot air at the same time. So both the CPU and GPU are actually really decent with the tiny air cooler configuration. Are you freaking kidding me? Glass cases, am I right? And now let's do the sensible thing by mounting a 280 at the front. To nobody's surprise, doing a standard 60mm radiator plus fan installation was nice and simple, plenty of space between it and, like, say, your cables and your motherboard, your GPU on the other side. And now the glass panel absolutely makes sense, revealing your CPU pump head to display some system information, to display some GIFs. Like, that all is awesome, especially because the case should live on your desk. But I'm not convinced about the whole RGB angle, so I turned off the front fans and that looks way better for me. I even turned off the exterior ring illumination on the pump head and only kept the text, because again, that looks way cleaner when things are not just super in your face, but are just slightly subtle. But for temperatures, I expected this right away. We're dumping a lot of that heat that is generated by the CPU into our GPU chamber at the same time. Therefore, we have a much hotter running GPU, but a way cooler CPU in the process with the fans as intake. So of course, I had to rotate those fans to exhaust air instead. That's not ideal because now we're creating negative pressure, and therefore we are sucking in a bunch of dust in here from all the crevices because all the fans are set to exhaust. Of course, in this configuration, GPU temperatures improve significantly, but there's a slight increase in our CPU. So for 150 bucks, the H2 ticks off a lot of the boxes in the ITX space. Like, it is not super compact at 20 liters, but because it's a tower, it definitely occupies way less space on your desk in terms of footprint versus a traditional same volume enclosure if it was laying down. Here's how it compares versus other popular ITX enclosures in terms of GPU compatibility, radiators, and your CPU air coolers. I do appreciate the fact that our motherboard IO is accessible at the back, but accessing the GPU is a little bit strange, but it is deep enough in there so that the cable has enough space to actually do a proper bend. This to me definitely feels like an NZXT enclosure just from its simplicity point of view, and it definitely adds to their portfolio because they have really good mid towers, large and spacious full towers too, and now a really simple ITX enclosure that is not going to make you pull your hair out in terms of cable management. I would say hardware specs are decent. The GPU chamber could be slightly bigger and they could have optimized certain things to future-proof it. But otherwise, I would say it's a solid entry into the ITX space, especially with the window. If you want to showcase your AIO pump, this is one of the few ITX enclosures that can do it properly. But let me know if you agree. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next video.